When everything we consume is the worst thing ever by some mouth breather on the internet, how is anything truly the worst thing ever? Time for the only podcast to officially create a list of the worst movies ever made. The only one. For real. Worst movies ever.
Worst movies ever.
Oh, boys and girls and theys and thems of the world. It's been a long time coming here on the Worst Movie Ever podcast, but I have never discussed an Uwe Boll film. And at this point in the zeitgeist of film, the discussion of him has died down to a whisper. I haven't heard a single thing about Uwe Boll in so many years. I think the last thing I had heard about Uwe Boll was like, you remember when the guy was fighting people like critics, like literally holding boxing matches with them in order to shut them the fuck up? Like, you want to talk shit about me and you want to talk shit about my movies? Jump in the fucking ring and I'll pummel you to death. I fucking loved that shit, man. I thought it was amazing because honestly, even though, you know, here on this podcast, we're dogging a lot of movies, I still want to give the benefit of the doubt to the creators of these things. Because you know what? Making imperfect art, to me, is the lifeblood of making art. You need to be able to fail. You need to be allowed to fail. You need to be allowed to push boundaries and do things. And you know what? It's going to be for somebody. It's for you. If it's at least for you, that's something. And I know a lot of people out there would argue with me like, if it's just for you, then don't fucking put it out for everyone. Cinema is a community-based art, and you should be trying to appeal to the largest demographic of people possible. I just don't agree with that. Art is an expression. You should be able to just express. And there's always going to be somebody out there that picks it up and enjoys it. And Uwe Boll, for those of you that don't know, that might be younger, that weren't around in the early 2000s, is a German director who literally just like out of the gate was making a long string of video game based adaptations. Like he did the infamous House of the Dead fucking adaptation. He did Alone in the Dark. And then he did two more. I believe he did Postal, Blood Rain, and I think that might be it. Because I know he did the Rampage series, which is like 2 or 3 of those movies at this point, In the Name of the King, which I don't believe is tied to a video game. I could be wrong about that. And listeners, please let me know if I am wrong about that. And he did a horror movie called Seed. And he's done just a ton of stuff. The guy was super prolific and somehow just had deep pockets, or at least an investor with deep pockets that kept fucking bringing him back to make these movies that by no means did any of them look cheap. And that includes the movie we're talking about today. I know there'd be a lot of people out there that would disagree, but those people also haven't been watching the movies I've been watching on this podcast. By the standards of the 11 episodes we've done here on the Worst Movie Ever podcast, the public version of it, I mean, mind you, on the Patreon version, we've done huge Hollywood movies. Like, you remember we did that episode on North? So there's like, by the standards of what we have established here in the 11 episodes we've done, this and Halloween H2O may be the biggest like budget or best looking movies of the entire lot. But Uwe Boll, just like his movies are such a weird anomaly because in all rights, should they work? But they just don't. For the most part, but I kind of love it. And I've listened to a bunch of interviews with him, and he seems like a very headstrong guy that I kind of like listening to him in interviews, because it's inspiring to see somebody who's just going to be like, you know what, fuck you. I like making movies, and I'm going to continue to make movies. You either watch them or you don't watch them. You enjoy them or you don't enjoy them. And that to me is cool. Regardless, I don't know anything about his political affiliation or his feelings on any hot button topics. I just am like looking at him as somebody that makes art. And I got to give a thumbs up to that, because in some capacity, I've enjoyed most of the films of his that I've seen, which goes towards the movie we're talking about today, Alone in the Dark, that's based off of a long-standing series of horror adventure games that originally started, I believe, on like PC, and now they're on all major consoles. And this particular movie that we're talking about today, I believe, was based off of the PS1 game called Alone in the Dark, A New Nightmare, which I remember playing back in the day because it was essentially just like a Resident Evil clone. And if you go, it's on the PlayStation Network store and on their streaming service now that you can subscribe to. And I've tried playing it, and man, it's hard going back to those games. It's really hard going back to those games. But the movie today is supposedly based off of that. And its big draw, other than obviously being aimed at gamers, squarely in the face, is the fact that this stars Christian Slater, Tara Reid, and Steven Dorff. I know you're probably going, Derek, that's not something that's pulling me in. And I wouldn't fucking blame you for thinking that. But for movies of this nature, it's actually like, wow, well, I'm really glad I get to watch familiar faces in this completely low-rent fucking piece of shit. So you're asking me, Derek, what is the plot of Alone in the Dark, made by Uwe Boll? An ancient artifact is opened, and an invisible electric-based monster invasion headed by a rogue secret agent looking to wield their power are attempting to wipe out a paramilitary paranormal group, and only Christian Slater, Steven Dorff, and Tara Reid can stop them with flashlights and light bullets. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? I remember when I was writing that plot description last night, I was like, boy, oh boy, is that going to lose everyone? It's essentially just like there's some evil dude that found a goddamn artifact that's bringing about wants to bring about the end of the world so he can wield its power over everybody for reasons. Like, it's not even really fully explained in the movie by the end of the movie why this guy, like, what is being gained by him unleashing this horde of yet again invisible monsters who die with sunlight. There's literally nothing in the movie that says, gives him any motivation for doing this at all. On top of the fact that this paramilitary group that's kind of like, you remember the movie Hellboy and the underground military group that Hellboy was a part of? That's essentially like the paramilitary group that's Christian Slater and Steven Dorff are a part of. And back in the day, they were implanted with these centipede monsters that attach themselves to their spines for reasons. Like, again, I don't understand anything that's going on in this movie from a lore perspective and what the motivation of it is. It doesn't make any sense, but that's happening in this. So like these light monsters are trying, this guy is using this paramilitary group that he has organized and infected with these centipede monsters that are attached to their spines so he could control them and basically like enact terrorist attacks so that he could find this relic that opens this door and blah, blah, blah. I know you're probably saying, okay, I see how this is like a video game, right? This is based off of a video game. And for the most part, you know, you just turn your brain off to all of this and you're greeted to a lot of like silly action scenes that if you've seen fucking House of the Dead, you'd be like, oh yeah, it makes sense. This is the same guy that made this really ridiculous fucking thing. And just kind of like go for the ride. And my verdict on this is, you know what? This faintly resembles the video games the film was based on. And ultimately, this is a fun B movie hampered by atrocious asylum level fucking acting. And I can't even like stress how bad the acting in this movie is. And some spotty visual nonsense. I feel of all the movies we've done so far, the 11 episodes, this movie is completely worth checking out for trash fans out there. So I give a thumbs up to this. It's not good. Like, I think most people, if like most neuters would go into this movie, and I'm from now on, in the parlance of fucking John Waters, I am going to refer to normal people as neuters on this podcast. So I hope you guys approve of it. Give a thumbs up and we can move on from there. But I think most people have and would look at this and go, what a piece of fucking shit. And they wouldn't necessarily be wrong because they'd be seeing like these atrocious performances in this movie. But for what it is, it's a perfectly fine B trash movie. Like, I don't see what the big deal is, why everyone's like bent out of shape. I've never understood the hatred for Uwe Boll. They're not great movies, obviously. But if you're looking for like B movie hijinks, they're perfectly serviceable. So thumbs up on this one. Let's get to the good, the bads, and the what the fucks.
What is good?
I love Christian Slater in this movie. If there's one saving grace that this movie has, is that Christian Slater is in it. And he has charisma and gravitas that far exceeds a single other person that's in this movie. The unfortunate thing is his entire fucking personality is tied to a trench coat. I don't know why this guy, other than the fact that in the video game, the guy had a trench coat, why this guy is wearing a trench coat and has to have a trench coat on all the time. It makes no fucking sense. And in the beginning, one of my favorite scenes is Christian Slater is introduced and he's getting I believe he's in an airport. Oh, no, he's on a plane. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to recollect this at this point. He's sitting on a plane and this kid is scared by something. And Christian Slater just has a total disregard or care for this kid's mental well-being and just basically tells him that monsters are real and he should be afraid of the dark and all this shit. And the kid looks like he shit his pants. I fucking thought that was so fucking funny. It was so good, but honestly, Christian Slater is the saving grace of this film. There's another scene where Christian Slater, a cabbie asks him if he wants to lose a cab that's behind him, because as he's leaving the airport, he gets in a cab and then starts immediately getting tailed by someone, and the cabbie notices it. And he asks Slater if he wants to lose him. He's like, yes, please. So the cabbie immediately gets into the open lane where the guy tailing them can get right behind them. And they have the fastest low stakes fucking car chase I've ever seen in a fucking movie. While the music that's playing urges us to believe that this is an exciting sequence, it is most certainly not. And it's fucking wonderful at just how fucking stupid this sequence is. Because he's just like, the cabbie is, if I remember correctly, the guy that plays the cabbie is in most of Uwe Boll's films. And he is just overplaying it so fucking much that camp fans are just going to love this fucking sequence. I got to say, for a movie like this, which is obviously it would be, this movie came out in theaters. I'm sure you guys weren't aware of this, but like the first 3 or 4 Uwe Boll movies came out to movie theaters. You could go and see them, and they had theatrical runs. And for a movie that normally would be a direct-to-video kind of movie, especially at that time, which was surprising when these came out, and I think that's why ultimately these were dogged so bad, because they went to theaters as opposed to being just like direct-to-video B movies that people wouldn't have given 2 shits about. I believe this movie had like a $20 million budget, and it shows, to be honest. But the camera work and most of the action are aiming super high in this movie. And sometimes they create pretty cool scenes that are clear that, you know, even though that the lower budget, like of a Hollywood movie, $20 million is still a decent budget. Let's be fucking real clear on this. But in the scope of Hollywood movies that have grown to like hundreds of millions of dollars at this point, this is on the lower end of that. The performances definitely give away that what they could afford and what they couldn't afford. But like the visual, the editorial, the way this moves feels like a fucking Hollywood movie, and the camera work is fucking decent in this movie. It tries to look like a really big movie, and by the standards of like early 2000, it kind of exceeds. Like for the most part, this movie looks like a very typical, like the movie that I would tie this to, like you remember those Tomb Raider movies with Angelina Jolie? There are sequences in this, to me, that feel like those fucking movies. And I know there's some people out there just like, Derek, you're fucking talking out of your ass. But honestly, this felt like a 90s kind of like direct to video or even lower end Hollywood action film. It's 100% what it feels like. The effects work, for the most part, outside of a couple sequences, is actually, for my buck, pretty solid. Like the monsters that are in this movie that come in and out of like translucence, they are actually, even though there are invisible monsters and that you know that's going into the bad, because at this point on the podcast, it should be very apparent that I'm anti-invisible monsters in these movies. When they're shown, they're fucking cool. Like, I think they look great and they feel believable in these sequences. It's not like fucking Unseen Evil, which honestly, Unseen Evil Monster looks like a goddamn PS1 version of these monsters. And they fucking work for me for the most part. One of my favorite things in these kinds of movies that intermix like supernatural elements in science in like military is when we get a sequence where a scientist is explaining the lore and the mechanics of how the threat works. And there is a sequence in this in which Christian Slater sneaks in after stealing Steven Dorff's fucking key card to the military outfit, because the lore with Steven Dorff and fucking Christian Slater in this movie is that Christian Slater used to be part of this organization called 713, and he left or was kicked out for reasons, and now Steven Dorff is the head of this paramilitary group. And during an exciting action sequence, he steals Steven Dorff's key card so he can go in and find out where these translucent monsters are coming from. And he winds up with his old friend, this scientist that used to give him all his like 007 special gear back in the day to combat monsters. And this whole sequence where this guy is spitting out the most ridiculous scientific mumbo jumbo. I love this shit in movies. It's so stupid. None of it rings like it's reality. It feels like the screenwriter's just making shit up and making up words, which is very in line with a lot of video games, right? But this kind of stuff is so fucking fun. It's like there's a few sequences in this that just feel like, you know, Uwe Boll had seen scenes in other movies and felt like, well, this scene needs to be here. Let's do this. Along with like, there's this rando sex scene with fucking Tara Reid where she goes into his And this is a thing for me that I just don't understand. And I know I had this later on my list, and it might be in the bads. I don't even care. We're just going to talk about it right now. What was it with like 90s films where a protagonist or somebody had to have this insanely huge warehouse style loft with all of these like light shafts that are coming in and all this ornamental shit all over the place? So Tara Reid comes into Christian Slater's warehouse loft where he lives, and they proceed to have this Red Shoe Diaries / Skinamax level sex scene. No nudity, by the way. There's no nudity in this film. Complete with the most cheesy ass fucking like sex music imaginable. And that kind of shit just makes me smile and makes me laugh so fucking much that I love that kind of shit big time. And I got my last good for this movie is that the movie ends, the end credits have a fucking rad Nightwish song on it. So fans of Nightwish out there, hey, stick around for the credits. When the credits hit, there's a fucking killer Nightwish tune. Let's get to the bads.
What is bad?
This movie starts with, I'm not even remotely underselling this. Outside of boarding houses, opening text scroll, Alone in the Dark may be one of the longest fucking text scrolls I've ever seen in a movie. It goes on for a minute and a half. A text scroll that basically tells you all the lore of the entire universe of Alone in the Dark. It's fucking insane. And you're just sitting there going, why am I watching this? And it is a huge hurdle to get over. A minute. I know you're just saying it's just a minute and a half. But when you're sitting there watching text and a guy reading it for a minute and a half, you're kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? Why do we need any of this information? On top of that, the script of this movie is awful and incredibly on the nose. It feels like they had a fairly generic plot. You know, it's at no point in this movie do you need to really like battle your brain to wrap your head around what's going on. And it doesn't feel like any stakes are at hand because you know exactly where this is going. And I think my main problem with the fact that it's generic is that it's just like so on the nose. You don't need to like pay attention for the most part. And one of the things that this movie tries to be is a film noir. And it's mostly filmed, surprisingly, you know, the movie is about translucent monsters that live in the dark. The vast majority of this movie is in broad daylight, in which, you know, for the most part, my thoughts, because I think we've done this, we've talked about this before. I think on like Revenge of the First Wives, it also kind of wanted to be noirish. Films that want to be noir and don't have like stylistic lighting in them, and they're all taking place in broad daylight, it kills the noir aspect. So why even fucking bother? Why even bother? As I had told you before, the major downfall of this movie, you can like everything else that I'm saying in the bads can just be sidestepped as being, okay, this is just dumb. The acting in this movie outside of Christian Slater, and I'm sure some of you would argue with me that Christian Slater is also bad in this, is universally terrible. Universally terrible. Tara Reid, horribly miscast in this film. And I think that's like the major thing about this is that they want her to be, because she's a name, they want her to be the romantic lead. She's not good in this movie. Like at no point her character, who's supposed to be like this archaeologist and this museum curator, not believable, even in the slightest. Steven Dorff is being the most Steven Dorff he's ever Steven Dorffed in this movie. And he's not fucking good. No, and none of the other supporting cast, like there's this sequence where we keep going back to this main hub for 713, where it's like the command center where there's a few agents that are literally overseeing the entire operation from afar. And these two people that are doing this literally feel like high school theater level bullshit. And the acting is so atrocious outside of Christian Slater that is its major fucking downfall. If it had decent acting, I think this movie would be way higher regarded, because most of the action sequences in the monsters and the way the movie moves, it's decent for a fucking B-level movie. But the acting brings it so fucking down. And you could either say that is the director's fault for not pulling good performances out of these actors, or the script's fault for just like not really giving them much to work with. But it's shocking how bad it is. And it turns a decent movie into a slog. It really does. As I had said, there's this paramilitary group, and you will hear the numbers 713 at least 5,000 times in this movie, over and over and over again. If you wanted to create a fucking drinking game, if you are a drinker and you need to get absolutely blackout annihilated drunk, just drink every time they say 713 in this movie. You will have to go to the hospital and get your stomach pumped. For sure. At one part, there's this action sequence that comes up with this Temu level Rob Zombie fucking song. And it's comprised entirely. It's like takes place in the dark and comprised entirely of the same 6 fucking shots. Quick cut in such a rapid fever pitch way with tons of digital fucking like gun barrel blasts, muzzle blast effects, that it wants you to believe that so much is going on, even though it's clear we are just seeing the same 5-6 shots over and over again for like minutes on end. It is one of the worst fucking action sequences I've ever seen in a movie. It's terrible. Absolutely fucking terrible. Toward the end, and this is another bad, like, even though I said there are some action sequences that are good, there's a few that are fucking awful. And one of the awful ones is like toward the end when the monsters are on the loose and there's a siege with 713 drink. The monsters are in the middle and are surrounded by this paramilitary group, and they all start shooting. How the fuck are they not hitting each other? They're literally in a circle. The monsters are in the middle, and they are just guns ablazing, shooting willy-nilly everywhere. It's fucking shocking. It's like, did you not think about this? And then, of course, the movie has a complete non-ending where evil isn't vanquished, and we get an Evil Dead style camera right into Christian Slater's face. Cue Nightwish song, and that's the end of the movie. Like, non-ending, bad acting, and just like choreography and staging of action sequences are the downfall of what I feel is a fairly decent B-level movie. Let's get to the what the fucks.
What the fuck is that?
I think we've said this in the past on a few of the episodes, but here again, we have a scene where Christian Slater meets this nun, because he grew up in like a nunnery in an orphanage. He's an orphan. And they start on the porch of this orphanage, walk out into the lawn where kids are playing, talk, and then just turn around and walk right back to the fucking orphanage. What the fuck is up with these movies that feel they need to have like this movement where they walk somewhere and then they just return right back to where they started? Like, why did you leave? Why didn't you just hang out on the fucking porch and talk? What the fuck is that? And my last what the fuck was the whole 90s style huge warehouse loft. Like, why was that ever a fucking thing in any of these movies? Like, I get that it looks interesting, but it just is so cheesy, and no one fucking lives like that. And if they do, man, it's a world I am not aware of. So that's all I got for Alone in the Dark. I gotta be honest with you. Like, when I was watching this, by the end of it, I read up and I didn't realize there was a sequel to this movie that was made. Obviously, Christian Slater isn't a part of that fucking thing. But I think at some point in the near future, we're going to watch the sequel to Alone in the Dark. I want to see it. So prepare yourselves. We're going to be watching Alone in the Dark 2 on this podcast. And let me tell you, it feels like from reading the Letterboxd reviews, it's hated even more than this movie. So giddy up. But that's not going to be the next episode of Worst Movies Ever. Next episode, I'm going to be talking with my buddy Vaughn from the Motion Picture Massacre podcast about Slime City. If you guys haven't seen Slime City, rush out and watch it. That's what we're going to be talking about next episode of Worst Movies Ever. Until then, guys, take care and celebrate trash at all costs. Go watch Alone in the Dark. I promise you, it's fun.
Worst Movies Ever podcast is executive produced by Vaughn Koolmeyer and Shannon Smith. For more Worst Movies Ever, and to make the Doctor watch your worst movies ever, subscribe to the Worst Movies Ever Patreon at patreon.com/Worst Movies Ever. There you will get a monthly exclusive WME podcast plucked from the user-generated film list, randomized episode to episode. Until next time, celebrate trash at all costs. Toodles.